Hey everyone, Ben Coomber Radio, episode number 276. Now, when we talk about nutrition, we often negate the world of medicine. And medicine and nutrition kind of are these two separate entities, but they do actually need to be closer together. Because if you think about some of the greatest discoveries in the world in terms of prolonging health, combating disease, all that kind of stuff, we have to put that thanks down to medicine. And we quite often sort of palm off medicine when we focus on nutrition and say, well, if you just focus on nutrition, everything will be good. We're going to try and bridge that gap today between medicine and food and well-being and feeling alive and kind of thriving in whatever we do. And today's guest is well placed to do that. She's an incredibly successful person in the kind of book space now with her first book. She's an incredibly humble person. Hazel Wallace, welcome to the show.
Thanks very much. I'm very excited to be on it.
You have done incredibly well with the book. It has been hard work because it has come off the back of you training to be a doctor and kind of juggling all this stuff. Give me a bit of background on the journey today and kind of bring the listeners into your space of where you've been on this journey yourself.
Okay. So like you rightly said, I'm a doctor, and my first book has just come out, and that's called The Food Medic, which is also the name of my brand and my blog, and everywhere you find me on Instagram, etc., etc. But I started my journey about 5 years ago now. I was in my first degree, which was medical sciences in South Wales. And I was coming to the end of my degree, like everyone else, where like most people kind of fallen into the trap of living the typical uni life, going out in the weekends, going out in the week, living off fast food. I was studying a lot in the library, so I would stay there for hours on end, but just bring like bags of crisps, sweets, Haribo, that kind of stuff to just keep me going. And I kind of got myself into a bit of a rut where I'd gained a lot of weight. I just looked really unhealthy. My skin was really poor. I was on antibiotics for acne. I had really bad asthma at the time and really, really low self-esteem. And like, although my grades were doing well, I personally wasn't doing very well. And I had applied to do postgraduate medicine and found out I got it. So I was like, right, Hazel, you're going to be a doctor. You look not very healthy and you need to lead by example. So I decided I was going to kind of take it upon myself to learn a bit more about nutrition. And the thing is, I have done 2 science degrees. I've done medical sciences and I've done medicine, both of which you do a module in nutrition. But the thing is, you don't really learn about how to apply nutrition to real life situations. So like, yes, I know what carbs, fats and proteins are. I know all about insulin. I know all about hormones. But I don't really know how to make my diet or my patient's diet optimum. Like, I don't know how to improve their health through nutrition. And I used myself really as a guinea pig as a medical student. And I was a girl who was having like 3 bowls of Frosties for her dinner to someone who started cooking from scratch again, started learning about food, started getting in enough protein and the right quality carbohydrates, fats, and I absolutely changed my diet completely and improved my health. Not only did I have more energy, but I was off antibiotics. I was looking better. I was dropping the weight. I started going to a gym. I was never really been in a gym before, and I found a real passion for weightlifting, something that I'd never ever considered. Someone like me, a small girl, lifting weights. Like, initially it was like, it wasn't really trendy back then either. So like, even when I was going into the weights room, it was still like, oh my god, there's a girl in the weights room, like everyone leave the building. But my boyfriend at the time was like, look, it's fine, you can do it. He was a rugby player. He was like, I'll kind of talk you through like certain things. And I just found really, like, I really enjoyed it. And it kept me motivated, kept me on top of my kind of clean eating pattern, I guess. And that's when I started my little Instagram kind of page. And it was private at the time, just for me to keep myself accountable to what I was doing, keep me motivated. I could log what I was doing, I could post recipes. And then I found myself spending a lot of time researching and talking to people about food. And someone said, why don't you start a blog? And I didn't really know what a blog was, or, what a blogger done. So I was, tell me about a blog. So I started a really basic WordPress blog, and I was writing about food. I was sharing recipes, and it grew from there. And basically, I continued it throughout medical school. It was tough because, like, the hours you put in, the amount of time you have to spend revising, but I kept it going because I loved it. And I was travelling back and forth to London from Cardiff nearly every weekend on the megabus with my textbooks, like trying to do everything. And then I applied, I graduated and applied for a job in London, and now I'm here. I've written my first book, and the Food Medic is thriving. So it's I'm passionate about it, and I think it's doing so well because I've got a message, and I feel like it's something that needs to be heard, especially in, maybe not so much in the health and fitness industry because everyone knows about food, but especially in the medical field. We don't talk about food enough.
Why do you think that is? And I know that might be a horrifically loaded question, but and I'm probably actually, probably a bad guy to look at this, but when I look at the fitness industry, when I look at health and nutrition, there's all these different pockets, and there's maybe not enough people bridging the gaps, and sometimes people step into these gaps. Like Jamie Oliver's maybe a great example. He was a chef, he started to boulder in and say, right, the government needs to do more, like you need to start teaching people about food. We've got like Dr. Christian on the TV who does some great stuff. Why do you think there's not enough people in this space? Is it a time thing? Because obviously you're a doctor, you're really busy, you don't have loads of hours to be flying the flag and fighting the fight and creating all these programs. Is it a case that there's a lot of red tape and people feel that there's loads of barriers to lifting up this information? Because there's been a lot of negativity, or a certain amount of negativity over the years over like the EatWell plate and how nutrition is taught. What are you currently seeing in that gap between nutrition and medicine? And I suppose, where do you think it has the potential to go?
Well, I think you kind of said it initially. One of the biggest problems is time. So time with a patient has just reduced, massively over the years because we've got more and more patients, we've got less doctors, we've got less hands on board. I work in secondary care, so in hospitals. And that's usually when patients are more acutely unwell. So you're not just going to your GP for a cough or a cold or high blood pressure. You're going there if you need surgery or you've had an accident. And that's not really the time and place to talk about food. Where I think we need to be targeting people and patients is in GP practices. When you first go to your GP and you're like, I'm not feeling great. And I envisage in a couple of years that GPs ask about people's diet, not just going straight to pills, but what's on your plate? What are you having every day? Because here in the UK and across the world, that where we're putting our money in the healthcare system and where we're putting our time are in lifestyle-based diseases. So we've got like type 2 diabetes, we've got high blood pressure, we've got cardiovascular disease, stroke, heart attacks. That's where a majority of people are falling down. And it's not all to do with our lifestyle, but it's largely to do with our lifestyle, what we eat, how often we move, how stressed we are. And definitely genetics come into play. But for those diseases in particular, and that's a huge chunk of our workload, we can actually change that in the household. So again, that comes down to kind of the patient's choice, and it's up to us as just like the general population. It's our responsibility to look after our health. Like, doctors are there to make you better when things go wrong. That is true. But if we could intervene before people get to that point, if we could stop people having high blood pressure, if we could stop people having high blood sugar, I think where we're going wrong as the medical profession is we just see medication as like slapping on like a patch or a plaster. We're just trying to like temporarily fix the problem. Like if someone comes in, they've got high blood sugar, you're like, right, you've got diabetes, I'm just going to give you some insulin that will bring your blood sugar right down. Yes, that does in theory in the short term, But in the long term, their blood sugar is just gonna creep back up if you're not giving them the right advice to change that for the good. And like type 2 diabetes is reversible. You can reverse it through diet and stuff. And it's astonishing how, I mean, 99% of patients who I say that to, they're just like, what? Like they just
Wow.
don't just, yeah. So it's an education thing. And like, yes, it's a huge problem, and there's lots of different elements, and it's difficult to kind of see how we can change it here and now and quickly. But I think it comes down to educating people, giving them the advice and nipping it in the bud when it's early and not when it's too late and they're coming to hospital because they've just had a stroke, because they've got high blood pressure, because they're not looking after themselves.
Do you know of many of the kind of initiatives that are starting to be created? Because and you see this a lot on social media, the kind of chat around what other countries are doing. So, for example, I might be misquoting the country, but I think it's somewhere like Norway that had a intervention where it was government led, and they said, right, we're going to put practitioners in homes, and we're going to get them to educate the mum, the dad, the kids, and we're going to look at the whole home environment rather than going after the kids or going after the adults. And the reports that they writ up afterwards looked hugely successful, like the rates of like actual change and what happened within the household. Now, that's obviously a very intensive method. You've got to have a practitioner go into a home and literally coach someone, and that might be, let's just say, £2,000 per 6-week course for that practitioner to do that, whatever. Do you see any of that kind of stuff happening in the UK? Is there more ideas coming, or is it just kind of the same old leaflets, the same old pyramid being thrown around, and really we're just trying to see what can happen?
Yeah, basically, there's not much movement at the moment. I mean, I think like I'm one of the first of a couple of doctors, a handful of doctors who are interested in this area, and there is some movement. There's a lot of doctors interested in functional medicine, and that's looking at the source of the problem rather than looking for a treatment. So functional medicine is a bit more of an American kind of term, and not all of it's evidence-based. So for me in particular, I'm a bit hesitant to kind of fully go over that way. I think mixing functional medicine and mainstream medicine is the best way to do it at the moment. And kind of taking bits from both. But one of my friends who is a GP, Dr. Rangan Chatterjee, I don't know if you've heard of him, he has a program called Doctor in the House, and that's just been out in BBC, and he's gone into houses like you've just explained and spent like a couple of weeks with people, with patients, and try to, through lifestyle measures, through like reducing their stress, changing their diet, doing physiotherapy with them, has reversed their diseases. And this is people, like one woman in particular who had like chronic migraine like hundreds of times a day. But the thing is, what he's doing is incredible, and he's opening people's eyes on how like different ways that we can treat things. The only issue is we don't have the time or money in the NHS to get a GP to go in and live in your home for 6 weeks. But if we could give people the tools, or if we had multidisciplinary teams in GP practices, so it's not just the GP that's there. If you had a GP, if you had a diabetes nurse specialist, if you had a dietitian, a physiotherapist, a PT, and you had access to that, and you could do group sessions and get people involved, get people a bit more inspired, because I think the problem is, and evidence shows that patients respond best to treatment when you give them autonomy. So when you give them choice over their treatment, when you give them information, and when they feel like you care. So that's why like people feel great when they go to the physio, because the physio is there for like an hour, and they're like asking you how stressed you are, asking what you're doing with your diet. They're like touching you, like clinical examination. That's so like undervalued, I think, in the medical profession.
See, I have an interesting theory, and I agree with everything you said, by the way. My approach with everything I do, despite being a nutritionist, a coach, is that people, like, there has to be this moment for people where you go, there, That's it. There's that almost that aha moment. Like you had a moment where you were like, do you know what? I need to be healthy. I had a moment where I was like, right, I'm going to stop being obese. I'm going to lose all the weight. And while I think information is really important, I think a level of inspiration is equally as important. So you can go into a doctor's surgery, and this is probably the troubled area of medicine in the NHS, is that they are usually, and I know I'm kind of shooting from the hip here, they're usually dealing with people that are potentially not in a good place. They've been ill for quite a while. They have maybe come from a less fortunate background. They don't believe that they can be really happy and healthy and successful with their health and their career and everything. And because you're working with that population, we've got tools that are currently saying to them, by the way, an apple is better than a packet of crisps. Everyone knows that. But at what point is someone going to bowl in with a program and say, do you know what? This is why you should be healthy. This is what you get from it. And this is why I see the positive movement of what you're doing and some of, you know, all this kind of momentum, especially that we have on Instagram of like people saying, you know, body confidence, love yourself, like eat well, fuel your body and mind. I think there needs to be this like mindset approach, inspiration approach, so that people actually have a reason to say, I am going to choose to eat an apple today.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, it definitely comes down to motivation, and I don't want people to only become motivated when it's too late, like when they have the diagnosis that, you know, that their blood pressure is through the roof. And sadly, for most people, they don't want to change their diet until that happens. And also for the kind of like the younger generation who I also speak to, they're not concerned about their health problems, like, or their potential health problems in the future. They're concerned about looking good, and I find that really difficult. Like, I mean, everyone wants to look good, everyone wants to feel good, but it's so difficult to reiterate to like the younger population, like, if you look after your body now, you might not have to be on blood pressure medication in 20 years' time. And I think, like, I'm not saying that it's too late for the older generation, but I think that we need to kind of like educate people who are still young and fit what we know now, so that they're not coming to the GP practice in a couple of years' time and they've got like type 2 diabetes. And like, I know that what you said, like, it's not just about education. We are educating people all the time. The reason the like EatWell plate doesn't work is because no one follows it. Like, no one eats whole grains, lots of fruits and vegetables, good quality meat, dairy. No one follows that.
Fair point.
Yeah, it definitely comes down to a motivation. And I don't know whether that is a good point. You know, when I spoke about having a multidisciplinary team, whether it comes down to community interventions and you're getting speakers in there that inspire people. Because I know when I go do a talk and I tell people this, they're all inspired and they stay after and they talk to me and they want to know. And I think we think that people don't want to know when they do. And I often find that with like other doctors, they just think that their patients aren't going to take the information on board. But I'm like, if you're willing to give them that, you know, like, you're doing half the battle. And just simplifying it, making health more accessible and not like this really over the top, exhaustive, difficult thing to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, tough, hey? With the kind of future of nutrition, with this aspect of functional medicine, you kind of like, when we talk about different topics, we kind of like pigeonhole everything. We sort of say, well, medicine's medicine and functional medicine's medicine and nutrition is nutrition. With the medical industry not looking over at functional medicine and saying, okay, not everything there is evidence-based, but we have to appreciate that until the evidence is there, this is potentially our best solution. Is there not enough people accepting to be able to go, maybe we should try that? It's like fecal transplants. When they started to talk about that in the US and in the UK, people were like, what? And I'm like, you've got to look at it. Like, people are getting incredible, you know, turnarounds in their health. Like, yeah, it's wacky, but if it works, like, come on.
That's true. And like, I mean, obviously my approach is evidence-based, but not everything needs to have like a scientific paper to add to someone's life. And I think if it's not going to cause any harm, then we should go for it. And that's my approach when it comes to things like Like I'm really big into reducing stress and mindfulness and meditation, and I find that really hard to kind of engage with other people because they think it's just like this hippy dippy thing from the States, and I'm like, no, actually, you can do it every day. And where was I even going with that? Oh my God, my brain's just gone.
Functional medicine, accepting kind of.
Yeah. And at the moment, the research is just coming up to front with that. You know, it's not completely evidence-based. We're integrating it in some things in the UK guidelines, in the NICE guidelines for recurrent depression. We now use mindfulness as like one of the kind of management strategies. We're starting to see it in other things, and not just mental health, but in irritable bowel syndrome, we're using that. And they're all like things that functional medicine practitioners have been using for years. And we didn't really think that we were just like, we can't just talk to patients or like teach them how to be mindful. Like it's not going to work. And I think because pills are our bread and butter, it's difficult to kind of pull back and be like, maybe there's another way. But me personally, I see the benefits in both, and I try to speak to my colleagues about it. And some of them are really open-minded, and I don't want to pigeonhole again, but I do think it's the younger doctors who are just coming in now. They understand a bit more about lifestyle medicine, whereas some of the older doctors, because they've been doing it for so long, they're like, whoa, 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 I know what works. I've been doing this for years. This is my experience. And they're really successful. But I just feel like we're kind of like fighting a losing battle. It's like the numbers are going up. We're not like making anyone healthier. Yes, people are living longer, but they're not necessarily living longer, healthier lives. And like, we want to make people like, the whole purpose of life is that you're fit, you're healthy, you can enjoy it. Not that you're just living longer, but you're on 50 medications and you're in and out of hospital every day.
I think the reality of trying to get a shift is that a huge amount of people need to be on board with like an initiative. I remember I was working with Joseph Lightfoot probably about 3 years ago on a movement called Move, Eat, Treat. And he is a doctor based in Manchester. He left medicine after a while because he wanted to kind of focus on personal training and coaching, because he felt he could make more of a difference, or this was the case at the time. Anyway, he set up this movement, and you know, he was getting some slow traction, but I think like anything, Joe didn't have enough people to work with to really just keep banging on doors and saying, look, we have to listen to this stuff. And his exact movement is kind of what you're trying to do with Move, Eat, Treat, to say, let's just raise awareness of what we can do and how nutrition can bridge this gap between lifestyle-related diseases and health. And, you know, if we think about the work that Jamie Oliver has done, he's been working literally for 10 years as one of the most famous people in the UK to knock this door. And, you know, and how much actually of a dent has he made?
I don't know. Like, I mean, he did do phenomenal stuff, especially when it comes to children and their nutrition. But I just think that it's like, it's difficult to change guidelines, and it's, you know, you get to a point and then there's so many roadblocks because there's so many people that you need, there's so many like tiers that you need to kind of get by. But I think, you know, with me and some of the other doctors who are starting to create noise in this industry, people are starting to listen. You know, I think a couple of years ago my book wouldn't have done so well, but more people are open-minded. And I get contacted by lots of doctors, like I mean a lot of doctors, a lot of GPs, and they're like, we want to know this information. We want to know how we can tell our patients to improve their diet, to improve their lifestyle. And I think that, you know, the interest is there. Like for medical schools especially, we need to be integrating this into their curriculum. And then at a GP level, whether they can do add-on courses to teach them how to like give patients advice on mindfulness, meditation, improving their diet, personal training. It's simple things like that. And I mean, to be honest with you, Ben, when I started with the Food Medic, I was pitching at girls my age. And now I'm pitching at people in their 40s, 50s, 60s. And I'm like, I need to regress the information I'm giving, because like I've kind of learned everything about myself, my own training, my own nutrition. But what people need is really basic advice, accessible information so that they know I can go to Tesco, I can make a healthy kind of meal from just the ingredients I can find there, and I don't need to go to some niche supermarket like Whole Foods and spend a bomb on all of these ingredients that I probably don't know much about, won't use again. And it's the same with training. Like you see so many videos like on Instagram or like people trying to give out like, the best squat technique or squat variations. And I'm like, just teach someone how to do a squat and that's enough. Like, I mean, I had a doctor at my last seminar put her hand up and say, sorry, can I just stop you there? Can you tell me what a squat is? And initially I was kind of like shocked because I was like, what? And I was like, in my head, like, Hazel, don't judge because everyone's on a different journey and we just really need to bring it back to basics. And I was like in heels on stage and I was like, right, this is what you do to do a squat. And I think that's what we need to remember as people who are online, where we've got a huge platform of people that we're speaking to. Yes, some people want a bit more information, but we also have to remember the people who are starting out from the beginning and they have no clue about like what to do in the gym. They've got no clue about a healthy diet. They were me. There's girls out there who are on the 3-day frosty diet, and I think we're getting too far ahead of ourselves sometimes, and we just need to regress it back, and it's all about little changes.
This is where I'm going to take a moment to accuse the fitness industry of being part of the problem. And this is kind of a great point that you've stimulated in that you've just used an example of where most people are at. And let's be honest, like us in the fitness industry, we sit on this nice shiny tree where we know stuff and we know, what leaves are good and what are bad and what the foundations need to be. But 98% of the population literally have no idea. One example, I posted on my Facebook page a breakfast that I was having, and the breakfast was a scoop of whey protein mixed with some Greek yogurt, a little bit of milk, some fruit and some muesli. By all standards, a pretty decent breakfast. And then a guy posted on it, Ben, I don't think you should be posting stuff like that because you know that there's better options you can make. And I said, okay, educate me. And he said, well, you could have soaked the oats overnight and you could have not used whey protein and you could have used like a whole form protein like eggs and stuff like that. And I was like, dude, that is absolutely awesome. But I'm trying to make a 2-minute breakfast that 95% of the population can make rather than going, you've got to do this overnight and then you've got to put this in the fridge and then you've got to sprinkle this on in the morning and then you've got to add that. And then all of a sudden people are like, man, I'm not doing that. I'm just going to have some cereal. And that's the reality. And the fitness industry need to stand back and go, who is my customer? All these people that are obese, got diabetes, they are the big changes that we need to make. And all our information is so alienating. And it comes back to your point about the food pyramid. For years and years and years and years, the fitness industry have slagged off the food pyramid. And I'm going to admit, I'm very guilty of this. And the food pyramid, in reality, we would change, 10, 15% of it? We'd probably tweak a few things. So we're all arguing about 10% that we want to change. And the reality is, the groundwork is there. You've said it. Eat lean meat, eat whole grains, eat fruit and vegetables, move, hydrate, be happy. If everyone in the fitness industry is standing there going, food pyramid's a load of shit, you shouldn't follow that, saturated fat this, saturated fat that, everyone then goes, well, the government don't know what they're doing, the personal trainers all argue, and no one knows what they're doing in terms of nutrition. And when I post something on Facebook and say, who's confused about nutrition? Even educated people are putting their hands up going, I'm confused. So if we're confused, everyone else is confused, and we're part of the problem.
That's it. There's too much information accessible to people, and it's just, like no one knows if the sources are reliable, if the person is like qualified to give that advice, and it's just, the thing with science is there's no black and white answer. There's no one size fits all. So when you see people like selling you programs or a particular diet, like that should be a red flag in your head thinking, that's not going to work because my body is different to your body. I've got different tolerances. I've got different preferences. I've got different genetic makeup. I've got different hormones. Everything's different. And I just think we need to simplify it, and people can create their own healthy diet. And with my book, I was very, very clear cut to like kind of try to dispel all of the kind of myths that are out there when it comes to nutrition, but also with my recipes, like I made them when I was a student. So I was like, I want them to be budget friendly. I want the ingredient list to be short. I want people to open the book and not look at it and go, oh, that's too difficult. I'm not going to make it. Chuck it away. I want people to like open it again and again and have like food all over it because they're using it and it's easy to use. It's accessible, it's budget friendly, and they can use any supermarket to pick up the ingredients. And that is what I've kind of done. And it's because I started this as a student. And like even now that I'm working as a doctor and I can probably afford to maybe buy shop in a nicer supermarket, I'm like, it doesn't matter because it doesn't matter where you shop and it doesn't matter if you're buying organic vegetables. The fact is you're buying vegetables and you care enough to cook for yourself and you're putting like love and attention into your eating. Like one of the things I'm so passionate about is the social aspect of eating and how we eat. It's not always about what you're eating, but how you're eating, Are you eating on your laptop while you're scrolling through your Instagram feed? Like, did you even realize that you just ate a meal? What did you eat? Like, they're just like not aware of what they're eating. Whereas we always say that the Mediterranean diet is the best diet in the world, and it is. Like, time and time again, the research shows it is because it's full of healthy food. But also the Mediterranean people, the way they eat, the way they live their lives, like they sit together in big families. They talk over their meals. They don't have Instagram out. They don't have like a laptop in front of them or the TV on. They're like socializing. They're talking about food. They're eating slowly. They go for a walk after their meal. Like that is because they don't just see food as fuel. Like I'm a scientist. Yes, food is energy. It's fuel, but it's so much more.
Before I move on to your book, we kind of need to ask anyone that's listening to this show, that might be a coach or in a position to influence the educational process of someone else, to think about the information that they put out and say to themselves, is what I'm putting out accessible? Am I always going against the grain? Like if we all sit here and keep poo-pooing the food pyramid and all the stuff that's foundational, we're going to keep just confusing everyone. So I want everyone listening to think, okay, am I really serving the majority of the population in the right way? And that's one of the steps we're going to get greater change by starting to agree on more stuff and not argue whether you should eat a banana ripe or a banana once it's got brown spots on it or whether it's green or whatever. It's just minutiae detail. So, Hazel, your book, if someone picked it up, what can they expect to learn from it? What have you tried to pass on to the reader by, getting the book?
Okay. So basically, when I started my journey to learn about nutrition, I realized that I could find my information from a health magazine, which probably wasn't a very reliable source, or I could dig into the research and read a paper, which would take me a couple of hours, and I'd have to reread it, and I'd have to read more, and I'd have to compare it, and I'd have to see how strong the evidence was. And I thought, if I'm finding this difficult, what is someone who doesn't have a science degree? What are they doing? Where are they finding their information? And I thought, there's nothing in the middle that kind of gives me basic information, but that's evidence-based. And I was like, I'm going to write my book. So before I was even offered to write a book and to be published, I'd already written the kind of like the template of my book because I knew what I wanted to put out there. And that was just the fundamentals, basics of nutrition. And I know like from listening to your podcast, you're kind of like on the same wavelength. And that's just giving people the information, fundamentals, so that they can take that away and they can go live their life and not have to like adhere to some crap program that's telling them to have like cottage cheese and carrot sticks at 11 a.m. and tuna and a jacket potato at 1 p.m. So basically the book starts with the basics of nutrition, carbs, fats, proteins, what they are, where you find them, and kind of the best sources. I talk about my own kind of how to build a healthy diet, which is very similar to the healthy play. And just talking to people about how much they need of each macronutrient. But again, I reiterate, this is not calorie counting. I don't want people to kind of calculate the macros. Just eyeball it. This is just a rough reference guide. And it's the same with my recipes. I'm like, these are my recipes, but I want you to go away and make them your own. Like swap out the fish, put in chicken, or if you don't eat chicken, maybe put in tofu or put in some sweet potato. Like, I want people to learn from the book and make changes that way. I also talk a lot about nutrition and health, so focusing mainly on the big systems in the body, so brain health and mental health, digestive system and kind of digestive health or gut health, what food kind of helps that and hinders that, and skin health. And then most importantly, where most of the research is cardiovascular health. Because you could probably gather from the start of the talk, I'm really, really passionate about nutrition and its effect on cardiovascular health. And that is from a professional kind of point of view, but also a personal point of view, because I lost my father to a stroke when I was 14, and he'd recently been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes and high blood pressure. So I don't know, but I know that lifestyle is largely to do with that. And if I can help someone change their diet so that they don't, become unhealthy or lose a loved one because of lifestyle measures, then I think it's worth putting that information out there. So that's really the entire book. And then I've got a whole section on home workouts, because I'm also a personal trainer. So it's a bit of a textbook. It's a big book, but I'm proud of it. And I hope it's as accessible as possible. I haven't put in any medical jargon in there. I've kind of written it myself. I didn't get a ghostwriter. It's just like you and I talking now, and that's how I talk in the book. That's the language that I use. And again, like I said earlier, all the recipes are pretty simple to do, so you don't need to be Jamie Oliver in the kitchen.
Well, it sounds like an amazing book.
Thank you.
And it must be pretty good, because as the time of recording this podcast, you have sold 31,000 copies.
Yes, well, so I've been told the past couple of days ago, so hopefully it's going up still.
Which is pretty awesome. So firstly, congratulations, because it's phenomenal. It must be very proud to be able to influence that many people to just think about what's going in their mouths, to think about their health, to think about their well-being, and like you said, not just from a weight perspective, which we're very quick to focus on in fitness. It's about how you feel, how you view your body, the enjoyment of food, the process and the journey that we're on, which is too often ignored in fitness.
Yeah, I came across a phrase in a paper recently, and they said we need to focus less on weight loss and more on health gain. And I thought that was really, really a really nice way to put it.
I love that. That's cool.
Yeah.
Well, Hazel, thank you very much for your time on the podcast. I do appreciate it. For everyone that is listening, please go and check out Hazel's book. Hazel, I'm assuming it's on the Amazon machine that we all use.
Yes, it's on Amazon, Waitrose. You can find it in some Tesco's, the Hive. I've got all the links on my website, but Amazon currently half price, so head over there.
Oh, half price deal. And social media, you are The Food Medic?
Yeah, The Food Medic on everything, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and my website's thefoodmedic.co.uk.
Amazing. For everyone that's listening to the show, please, when you see it on social media, share it, like it, engage. If you've enjoyed it, reach out to Hazel and say something. Say, oh, I really agree with you. Also, support the message. Like, Hazel's doing some incredible work. When you see something crop up on social that maybe is trying to get this kind of shift in fitness, to make us think about something, they're the messages that we need to be sharing on social media. Not just liking the amazing recipes. It's about, if we're ever going to help to get some kind of traction to buy people into this stuff, there needs to be a unified message. So if you see, Hazel really trying to say, guys, I need to get you behind this stuff, then, get behind it, because It doesn't go anywhere if we all just sit there, keep scrolling on social. It needs support for these kind of things. And Hazel, if I can ever support your message with anything that you're really trying to get any kind of traction with, just ask me, and I will gladly help in any way I can.
Amazing. That means the world, and that means a lot.
Always. Right, Hazel, thank you again. For everyone that's listening, we hope you've enjoyed the show. I will be on the show next week with either another incredible guest, or it will be me and Tom back talking and answering your questions. If you've got a question for this show, please email in bencoomber@gmail.com. And if you've never ever written a review for this show on iTunes, please do so. I now have over 250 more reviews than Tim Ferriss. I think that's quite cool. I'd like to keep getting more reviews than Tim Ferriss. So if you can go onto iTunes and help leave a review, it will help more people discover this show and lead to more people educating themselves around food, health and mindset. Hazel, thank you very much.
No worries. Thank you for having me.
And for everyone else, I will see you next week. Goodbye. Hey everyone, Ben Coomber Radio, episode number 275.